Mario Kart is the most successful racing game franchise to ever exist, selling over 196 million copies. The game series since Mario Kart 7 has also been the most selling game in each of Nintendo's console generation. With the franchise having such a storied history, it's surprising to think that the game as it is right now was never actually meant to exist. As a matter of fact, the original version for this game was something completely different. Before Mario Kart, Nintendo had another racing game, F-Zero. Now this was meant for the more serious gamer. It was a futuristic racing game with ultra fast cars and long straightaways, meant to be more similar to something like Formula 1. The game was a commercial success and was well loved by fans. According to all measurable metrics at the time, it was a great game. Except for one thing. You could only play it on your own. Shigeru Miyamoto believed that playing together should be at the heart of the Super Famicom experience. As such, he pushed for the system to ship with 2 controllers right out of the box. Ironically enough, however, none of its launch titles supported this. Both F-Zero and Super Mario World were single-player titles. And so, with the flaw in plain sight, Miyamoto came up with the solution. He tasked developers Tadashi Sugiyama and Hideki Kono to convert F-Zero into a 2-player game. Not long after beginning work on the project, the team hit a wall. They realized that adding split screen to the game wasn't actually possible. Remember the ultra fast cars racing down the long straightaways that the game was known for? Well, because of the console's hardware limitations, the speeds that the cars were moving at made it impossible to display the tracks on 2 screens at once. So to get around this problem, they did the only thing that they could. They made the size of the tracks a whole lot smaller. These shorter tracks, however, came with their own set of problems. Those straights that they had, they just didn't make sense anymore. Racing on them would just have made the game feel dull. So building upon their changes, the team decided to move in a different direction and gave the tracks a brand new identity. They made them tighter, they made them twistier, and they packed them with a lot of turns. Now that the tracks were figured out, they moved to the next order of business, the cars. In F-Zero, they had cars going at speeds of around 400 kph. Importing those in this game, however, wouldn't work quite as well. With a lot more turns in the courses, the speed of the cars also had to be decreased accordingly. Little less than a quarter of that would do. Only one problem though. What kind of race car drives at only 80 kph? A go-kart. Now, even though they had settled on the vehicle of choice, making it feel right was another challenge entirely. The team tried everything. They read books, watched movies, built a model in the office, they even had a work trip to a local amusement park to experience go-karting firsthand. But in the end, they realized that making the physics too realistic would actually take more away from the game than it would add. So instead, they decided to let the game feel more arcadey instead. A clear example of this can be seen through the drifting mechanic. The developers initially wanted players to have to counter-steer in order to pull off a drift, as it is in real life. But with playtesters finding it too difficult, they changed course and made it simpler. In the final version of the game, drifting was instead done by holding down a button while turning, letting players slide smoothly around corners without all the hassle of realistic steering. With the handling now nailed down, the next step was to give the drivers themselves some personality, because at this stage, the characters were still looking a little bland. The team's first idea was to keep things more realistic, races in overalls and helmets. But the problem was that every character ended up looking way too similar. They experimented with different colors, but it was still hard to tell them apart. And beyond that, they just looked kind of boring. So while thinking about what characters would be easily recognizable from behind, they decided to put in Mario just as a test at first. But well, as we all know now, it sort of just clicked. From there, adding the rest of the characters was pretty straightforward. Using existing IP, they filled out the lineup with a total of 8 different playable races, making sure that each character was easy to tell apart. Okay, so kart mechanics sorted, tracks are ready, and the drivers are done too. They had themselves a full-fledged racing game. But as it was right now, it could have been any racing game. What it still lacked was an identity, something that separated it from the rest of the pack. Their solution? Items. They had experimented with oil spills back when the characters still wore overalls, but with the Mario and Friends makeover, they felt it was only right that the items change as well, something more fitting to the theme. Replacing oil spills with bananas was an easy enough switch, but they didn't just want to stop there. Just having one item wouldn't cut it. The races needed more excitement. They wanted players to be able to track at the carts ahead of them as well, to shake up the competition and make the races more unpredictable. That way, victory wouldn't just belong to the best drivers, but to anyone clever enough to use their items well. This is the complete list of items available in the game. There are a few here that might throw you off at first. That's because some of these items weren't meant for the player. They were reserved for the CPU exclusively. Due to hardware limitations, computer-controlled races didn't use the full range of items that players had access to. Instead, each was given a smaller, character-themed set that made sense for them. For example, Donkey Kong Jr. would scatter bananas, Bowser hurls fireballs, and Princess Peach dropped little poison mushrooms. It gave the AI drivers their own quirks on the track, making them feel more like distinct rivals than just generic opponents. Sticking with the trend of making races more exciting, players at the back were also given an increased probability of getting stronger items, ensuring that they'd have a chance of catching back up. Although the addition of items was already a pretty sizable diversion from traditional racing, they didn't just stop there. A small boost was given to players who managed to complete a successful drift, coins that make you go faster, and they even let you jump because according to Miyamoto, this was a feature that simply couldn't be missing from a Mario game. And to hold it all together, they wrapped these mechanics inside a handful of different modes. The game had its own identity now, and with everything set, the team geared up for the launch. But before we get to that, if you've been enjoying this video so far, it would mean a lot if you subscribe to this channel. I'm trying to get to 100 subs and we are so very close right now. So please hit that button if you'd like to see more videos like this. Okay, back to the video. So they're about to finally release the game, and as you'd expect, this was a stressful time. They had spent the last 3 years of their lives working on this, and the day to show it to the world was finally here. Surprisingly, the game hadn't built up a huge amount of hype before its release, which left the development team feeling kinda anxious. Despite the uncertainty, however, obviously the launch had to go ahead. And on August 27, 1992, Super Mario Kart officially debuted on the Super Famicom in Japan. And well, as it turns out, all of the team's worries were completely unfounded. Super Mario Kart didn't just meet expectations, it blew them out of the water. Within just 2 days, it was sold out across Japan. The game was an instant hit. Critics applauded its inventive tracks, charismatic characters, and the perfect blend of skill and chaos in its racing mechanics. Players were thrilled by the introduction of items, drifting, and multiplayer battles, features that made each race feel unpredictable and endlessly replayable. The game didn't just launch successfully, it became a cultural phenomenon, establishing a franchise that would go on to sell hundreds of millions of copies worldwide and remain a beloved part of Nintendo's lineup to this very day. This was the moment Mario Kart was introduced to the world, and the rest is history.